In this Warframe guide, I'm gonna give you the best Endo farms currently available in the game. And one of these methods actually has the potential to yield more than 2,000 Endo in just under 2 minutes. So let's take a look at it, shall we? If you've played Warframe for more than just a couple of hours, you know Endo is probably the most important resource in the entire game, since it's used to upgrade your mods, and upgrading your mods is absolutely essential to being a powerful Warframe player. Unfortunately, however, maxing out only one Prime mod already costs about 40,000 Endo, and there are over 1,000 mods in the game and dozens of Prime mods, so you need a metric ton of Endo. So let's go and take a look at where to get it. And if for whatever reason you happen to like my content, I would greatly appreciate a like to support the video, or even a sub if you don't want to miss out on future guides. Our first Endo strategy is very basic and probably most of you already know it. I just wanted to throw it out there for completion's sake. If you have mods that you don't need anymore, you can dissolve them and get Endo for it. In order to do that, simply walk over to your mod collection in the Orbiter, sort your mods by duplicates and select all the duplicates you don't need anymore, click dissolve, and you will get your sweet Endo. I'd recommend looking into this every couple of weeks for a sweet little Endo boost. This method is very beginner friendly since you can actually go and do it from the first second after you start the game, but the following method is also a really nice Endo gain, especially for new players. As soon as you have access to Mars, you will also have access to Maru's Bazaar. From the moment you unlock the bazaar, you can go there, walk up to Maru, and click the dialogue option Ayatan Treasure Hunt. You can do this one time per week, and she will send you into a mission where you have to go into a vault and pick up a so-called Ayatan statue. This Ayatan statue is going to be given to you after the mission as a reward, and you can access it also in your mod collection. Go back into your mod collection, click Ayatan Treasures, and then you'll see all the Ayatan statues that you own. If you click one of the statues, you will see that it has a certain amount of sockets for so-called Ayatan stars. You will find Ayatan stars as you run missions by breaking open all sorts of containers. So take the Ayatan stars that you own, put them into the sockets, and once the statue is fully socketed, you can go back, visit Maru, and sell those Ayatan statues for a lot of Endo. We're talking about more than 1,000 till up to 3,000 Endo per statue depending on which one it is. And the best thing about it is, of course, since one of these Ayatan treasure hunts is a guaranteed Ayatan statue drop, you can get one of them for free every week just by running this 1 or 2 minute long mission. So absolutely start doing this as soon as possible. Of course, you can also go to Maru and sell Ayatan statues that are not fully socketed, but believe me, if you want the best bang for your buck, you want to fully socket them. And with our next Endo farming method, we're starting to get into the solid Endo farming territory. And of course, I'm talking about the Necrolisk bounties, especially the level 40 to 61. As soon as you're done with the Heart of Deimos quest, you can go into the Cambion Drift, which is the open world on Deimos, and do bounties there. All of these bounties have a tendency to reward you with Endo related stuff, but especially the level 40 to 61 is what you're looking for. In the first stage of this bounty, you have a 45% chance to gain 1,000 Endo as a reward for that stage. And the great thing about this is, even as a new player, you have access to Deimos really early. Of course, enemy level 40 to 60 might be a bit stressful for you if you really just started out with the game, but if you run it in a public squad, as long as you're not dying all the time and being a burden to your team, probably nobody's gonna complain. So, if you're a new player and you want to get your Endo up to speed, I suggest you go to the Cambion Drifts as soon as you can and run the level 40 to 60 missions in a random squad. But if you're actually strong enough to run this mission on your own, I have another great tip for you. The highest chance of gaining Endo is only in the first reward of the bounty. Of course, the other stages in the bounty can also drop Endo, but the chance is not as high. So I suggest, if you're running this mission alone, go in there, do the first stage, then go to the second stage and start it, and then take your Archwing, fly away, and abandon the objective. Then the bounty will fail, but you still keep your rewards, and you can go back to Mother in the Cambion Drift and restart the bounty, do stage 1 again, abandon it, go back to Mother, and so on and so forth. this would be the best way to maximize your Endo gain in the Cambion Drift bounties. But of course you can also go and run the entire bounty, because the rewards also commonly drop you Ayatan Amber Stars, which you're gonna need for your Ayatan statues, and believe me, the Amber Stars are quite rare in the missions, so you're gonna be happy to have quite some of them out of these bounties. One alternative to the Deimos bounties that I don't want to leave unmentioned would be the Zeraman as well as the Narmer bounties. Especially the high-level versions of the Zeraman bounties can yield you lots of Endo, speaking about 3,000 to 4,000 as a reward for finishing the bounty. So if it happens to be a mission type that you can finish quickly, maybe you want to go for that, but primarily I would suggest only going for the Narmer or the Zeraman bounties if you need the resources from these places. If you're solely doing it for Endo and you want to go the bounty way, then I suggest sticking to the Necrolist level 40 to 60 during the first stage, abandoning and so on. Coming up next is a super sweet way of grinding Endo, which is a bit different than you might expect, because we're talking about Railjack. I know most people don't really like Railjack and they're happy if they can get away with modding it as minimalistically as possible, but I for my part actually like the game mode. And if you're one of the other 3 people in the world who also like it, or you happen to need some Railjack resources, then Railjack Endo Farm might be the thing for you. The way you do this is actually pretty simple. Just head over to Vale Proxima and do some missions there. The enemies in this mission are quite likely to drop equipment parts for your Railjack, like shields or new cannons or whatever, but in Vale Proxima, all the drops will be tier 3. That's important because after the mission, you can go and scrap all the equipment parts that you got in the mission for Endo, and the higher the tier, the bigger the Endo outcome. So if you have a decent Railjack and are able to finish the mission quickly, you can maximize your Endo. Also, maybe some tips for finishing the mission. Everything that will give your Railjack more survivability is of course always welcome, especially if you go against Grineer Railjack enemies. They do quite some damage, so some hull integrity and armor will be appreciated. Also very nice is the mod that gives you a chance that you won't consume dome charges when you fire a forward artillery at the cruise ships. And for the crew, I definitely suggest having 2 members with 5 at gunnery and put them into the side cannons. If you have that, you won't even need a friend to play with you or even shoot yourself. They're gonna take care of all the pesky little enemies themselves, and boarding parties are also very unlikely to even get through to you because they will gun them down before they can even reach you. And that's basically it. Finish the mission as quickly as you can, scrap the parts, and get your sweet Endo reward. And the next Endo farm on our list would be for players that already finished the quote-unquote main story, because we're talking about, of course, the sortie. If you don't know what sorties are, finish the main quest first, but for all the others, we know it's a 3-stage mission, and at the end we have quite a high chance to get either an Ayatan Anaza statue or 4,000 Endo flat in cash. Either way, the chance of being rewarded in some sort of Endo-y way is not too low, and also if you don't get the Endo, you might get something which is even nicer, so I definitely suggest, if you have the time, run your daily sortie. You're gonna like the rewards anyway, and you're gonna make some nice Endo on the side. Also, of course, the weekly Archon hunt, you can also get Endo from that, but you know, I think you're gonna do the Archon hunt anyway, so yeah, I just wanted to mention it. I know. You've been waiting for it, and now we're gonna talk about it. Of course, when we talk Endo, we have to mention arbitrations. Arbitrations are special missions that are unlocked as soon as you finish all the missions on the star chart. That's right, no blue blinking anymore, everything has to be done at least once. Those arbitrations are special endless missions which will give you very nice rewards at every rotation. Most of these drops will be very Endo related, either you gain Endo right away, or you get Ayatan statues that you can socket again with stars and then sell that for Endo to Maru, and the best thing is, the longer you stay in the mission, the better the drops will get. So if you have a strong frame and a bit of time, arbitrations are gonna catapult your Endo gain into the S tier territory. And not only that, you'll also farm Vitus Essence in the process and have the chance of gaining some other arbitration exclusive rewards, like for example special mods or arcanes. I personally love arbitrations. Do you love arbitrations? If yes, then put it in the comments down below and tell me what's your favorite arbitration mission type to get that sweet loot and Endo out of. And of course, if you have any other funky methods of farming Endo, also let us know down in the comments below so we can all benefit from your knowledge, because right now we're gonna switch over to the best Endo farm in the game. And last, but definitely not least, the moment you've all been waiting for, the best, very best Endo farm in the entire game, which can yield you over 2,000 Endo in just 2 short minutes if you have a bit of luck and you're doing everything right, is the mission Vodyanoi on Sedna, or the so-called Endo Arena. This is sort of a Grineer team deathmatch type of fight against the AI, where you're gonna face off against Grineer executioners. The thing about this is the executioners in this mission have a chance of dropping either 50 or 80 Endo, and this chance is not really that slim. And with the right team setup, you can squeeze the Endo out of them like there is no tomorrow. And we're gonna take a look at what exactly you need for that. First off, you need at least 3 players. Of course, you can also go with 4, but 3 is the bare minimum. One of them will play Necros, another one takes Korra, and the third one plays Nidus. These are your 3 must-have Warframes for the mission. Of course, we're going to look into the builds for all 3 of them here in a minute, but let me first go over what exactly you have to do in the mission in order to make it work. The Korra player needs to go and place their Strangle Dome in front of the door here. The Nidus player will go and cast his larva at the exact same spot where the Strangle Dome is located, and the Necros player is gonna have his Desecrate on to get more loot out of the enemies, and of course all 3 players absolutely, and I cannot stress this enough, should try to absolutely not die. And at this point, I unfortunately have to apologize to you guys. For recording this video material, I did not have a pre-made team, so I cannot show you how the entire synergy is going to look in the end. I'm just gonna have recordings here doing what you're supposed to do as the 3 individual roles, but of course, it's not working in the footage because the team wasn't there. Nonetheless, the principle should be pretty simple. Nidus goes and pulls the enemies in with his larva, they will fall into Korra's Strangle Dome, and then they will be killed. What's important to mention here is the team can kill them in whichever way they desire, but one very important thing is that you absolutely use a slash heavy weapon with a high status chance, because you want to slash the enemies into pieces. You don't want to kill them as one piece, you want to make sure that they splatter into multiple body parts. Reason for that is that the Desecrate of Necros applies to every body part of an enemy individually, which means if you cut an enemy in 2, with a bit of luck he could actually drop twice as much loot for each individual body part. So absolutely go with a slash heavy status weapon and make sure that slash has the highest damage amount so it actually procs. Also, one thing worth mentioning is you can run this mission either in normal Star Chart mode or in Steel Path. If you go for Steel Path, you're gonna get more Endo. Reason is that in Steel Path you naturally have a higher drop chance for mods, and Endo in Warframe is not considered a resource but actually a mod drop, which means if you do it in Steel Path, the amount of Endo that is being dropped by the enemies is significantly higher. Of course, if one of the team members also happens to have a mod drop chance booster, that would be even more amazing and absolutely catapult your Endo gain into the stratosphere. But of course, let's also quickly look into the builds for the 3, starting out with Necros, because Necros is actually pretty simple. First off, none of what you see in the builds for the 3 is set in stone. There are a few basics that you need to make them work, but all around that is just optional. So let me explain what I did here. For Necros, it's actually really simple. All you need is a lot of range, as much as you can possibly have, and Despoil, which means you're not using energy, but instead your health to desecrate the enemies, which means you can basically keep it up all the time. For the range, of course, we went with Overextended, Stretch, and Augur Reach, which brings our range up to 273, because I only went for level 4 here due to the restriction in capacity, but believe me, that doesn't really make a difference for the build. But what I also did here is I went into a bit of ability strength. Reason for that is Terrify. Terrify does have armor reduction functionality, which, especially when you run Vodyanoi in Steel Path, is a blessing because those enemies take a lot of shots if they have their armor, and if you combine Corrosive Projection with a ability strength of 139%, which is Transient Fortitude, and Umbral Intensify, you will end up with 83% armor reduction here, plus 89% 19% armor reduction here, which means all the enemies will be full strip with one cast of Terrify. You need 139% strength for this. Of course, you could also go for Blind Rage and use a different aura with Blind Rage instead of Transient Fortitude. You would have a full strip on every cast, but that would cost you a lot of energy, and your energy economy isn't really that great in the mission, so I rather opt for Transient Fortitude with the Corrosive Projection variant. And, of course, due to the fact that I'm actually also going to use energy, I go with Equilibrium right here because, you know, I'm Necros. Necros means you're going to have a whole lot of health orbs lying around everywhere, which means with Equilibrium, also with Arcane Energize, your energy economy is going to be set. Probably even without Arcane Energize, but I just put it in there for safety reasons. Also with the other Arcane, you're pretty free in what you want to use. I personally went for Arcane Avenger because I'm going to be hurt a lot due to the Despoil augment. You know, every time I loot an enemy, I get a bit of damage, so I expect Arcane Avenger to trigger quite often, which is a nice critical chance boon because, especially in the Steel Path variant, as I said, those enemies take quite a lot of damage, and it is nice to have a bit more damage output, even if you're the Necros player. Continuing with Korra. Also for Korra, there is not so much that you actually really need, but let me explain what I did here. All you really need for Korra is the Augment Pilfering Strangledome, which makes that enemies that are caught up in your dome have a 65% chance of dropping additional loot. This stacks perfectly fine with Necros because what Necros does is he re-loots the enemies, and what Korra does is she increases the chance that an enemy will drop loot when looted, which means, you know, they stack up to really nicely squeeze the loot out of the enemies. Important for Korra is your range should be at 34%. You reach that by using Narrow-Minded, which is very nice because duration is also what you're gonna need on this build. Obviously, if your dome continues to be there for a longer time, that's good, you don't need to recast it, you don't have energy problems as much. So yeah, go for as long as a duration as you can afford, and also for a range of 34%. The rest is fluff around, you know, some Vitality, Prime Flow, Prime Continuity, Prime Surefooted so I don't get knocked down, Equilibrium a bit for the energy economy, as well as Arcane Energize here as well. Health Conversion, because due to Necros we're gonna have a lot of health orbs, this will stack up my armor a bit, so maybe I'm not gonna be one-hit killed with all the Vitality mods and stuff in combination, also Arcane Guardian. This is some survivability what I'm doing right here. Also I have Streamline, so the energy cost is a bit lower when casting the abilities, but all you really need is Pilfering Strangledome, 34% range, and that's it. Going into Nidus, and I just realized that I basically have a Fenmore equipped on all of them. Doesn't mean you have to use a Fenmore for the mission, by the way, but let's actually look into the modding. Also, what we're gonna have with Nidus is a very big focus on range, because Nidus is gonna be all about his larva to pull the enemies together. And that's also the reason why Korra's Strangledome should be so small, because what you're gonna do is you're gonna cast your larva with the big range, you're hopefully gonna reach every enemy in the arena, and pull them together. The reason we have a short duration is because of some mechanics that are a bit interesting and most people seem to not really know it when they play this mission, so let me explain it real quick. We're gonna have Pilfering Strangledome from Korra, which we need to maximize the loot, so the enemies need to be in Pilfering Strangledome. But Larva somehow is stronger than Pilfering Strangledome, meaning if the Strangledome and Larva are on top of each other, the enemies are going to stay in Larva instead of dropping into the dome, meaning if you kill them while they're in Larva, you're not gonna get the Korra boost by 65%. So what we're gonna do is we reduce the duration purposely so the enemies get pulled together by Larva, but Larva ends as they're pulled together and they fall out of Larva into the Strangledome, and then we kill them. So for the range again, we went with Overextended, Stretch, and Augur Reach, giving us the nice 265%. Also Fleeting Expertise for efficiency, we don't need duration, that's also the reason why we use this, so we go down to 40%. And with Umbral Fiber, Umbral Vitality, and Arcane Guardian, we're gonna ensure our survival even against the Steel Path enemies. Hopefully that's somehow going to work. If not, then we might have to come up with something else. Also, range is very nice for the energy economy. You absolutely don't need Arcane Energize here, because Rage makes that 40% of the damage you take will actually be converted into energy for you, which is very nice because as Nidus you're gonna take a lot of damage against your health, so your energy for larva should be up at all times. Also, you know, with fleeting expertise, it's gonna be cheap to cast it. You can throw in Equilibrium if you want to be super sure, but you know, as I said in the beginning, none of this is set in stone. The only important thing for Nidus is the 40% duration and the big range. Also, Steel Charge, I only used that for the mod capacity. But especially when you're running the Steel Path version, you're gonna have problems staying alive at times because the enemies will do significant damage, as I mentioned multiple times. So let me give you one or two examples of what you could additionally do to keep yourself alive, because believe me, nothing is worse than if one of your teammates dies and the whole house of cards collapses, because then the whole team setup doesn't work and the enemies overwhelm you. It's bad, it takes longer, your endo gain is gonna be smaller. Don't die, okay? What we can do is, if we look at Necros for example, we can go for Rolling Guard. If you do a dodge roll, you'll be clear of all negative status effects and you're gonna be invulnerable for 3 seconds. That's nice. If your shield goes down, you can use it with shield gating in conjunction. And also one thing that's a huge boon, and you can recast it all the time, go for the Vazarin Focus School, and we're gonna take a look at it. Use your protective sling. If you go into your operator and sling through your Warframe, you're gonna be invulnerable for 5 seconds. You can do that all the time. Keep yourself alive basically for the entire mission, shouldn't be that big of a deal. And in case you're new to the game and want to know everything there is to know about how the modding in Warframe works, or you want to get some nice sweet beginner tips to get you going faster than your opponents, then absolutely check out those 2 videos. And if you like the content, of course leave the channel a sub, I would greatly appreciate the support. I hope to see you in the next one, and until then, of course, good loot.